Hello there, great person. Today I want to talk about The Oldest View. The Oldest View is an analog horror series created by the talented Kane Pixels, best known for his Backrooms series, and I actually think it might be one of the most interesting horror series I have ever seen. The Oldest View consists of 3 individual videos, each progressively longer. The first one serves as a setup and tease, while the others are mockumentaries featuring student Wyatt. He stumbles upon a hole in the ground while hiking, leading him to explore it and encounter more trouble than he ever expected. When I first watched The Oldest View, I did so with the sole expectation of getting scared. I had previously watched Kane Pixels' Backrooms found footage, which I still consider one of the scariest, if not the scariest, videos on the internet. The premise of exploring a strange, newly discovered space is inherently intriguing and, to me, potentially incredibly frightening. The Oldest View follows a similar premise, albeit not identical, as we'll delve into. It primarily unfolds in an abandoned mall that actually existed but adds to the unease and terror by placing the mall deep underground. The setup was there. I was ready to get terrified. However, as I watched The Oldest View, there came a point where I stopped feeling scared, and the fear dissipated. The monster was no longer threatening, and Wyatt's incompetence became annoying. At first I didn't like this, as I had set out to experience terror. To Kane Pixels' credit, I did experience fear for a significant duration of the video until that certain point. I was anxious, shouting at Wyatt as he carelessly ventured deeper underground, fearing hidden monsters or worse. But in the end, I had the feeling that something was off, and it no longer worked for me as a horror experience. It all began with a simple joke I made. I expressed it because something irked me, and I wanted to put it into words. I said, "Trying to get you, mate." I think it might not be, like, you don't even know if it's malicious. Like, it might just want to carry you out. It might be very helpful. Yes, there it was, a trivial jest at the protagonist Wyatt, who encounters the monster known as the Rolling Giant. I poked fun at him and the giant, and it felt strange because the video seemed to align with all those comments I made. After watching the entire video, a thought began to take shape in my mind, a thought I had already shared a bit during my initial reaction. What if the giant is not evil? This thought is the reason I decided to create this video. It continued to linger with me long after the initial reaction, compelling me to think about it repeatedly. I might be way off, it might be reaching in parts, but to me, it is an interesting perspective on The Oldest View. A perspective that, even though perhaps not intended, can bring something of value to people. At least that's what I hope. So, in this video, I aim to present 2 possible narratives I find plausible in the context of The Oldest View. The first is the one I had during the reaction, where the giant is evil and hunts down Wyatt. But the second one suggests that the giant is not evil, and something else is driving Wyatt towards his ultimate demise. Keep in mind, again, that these are merely possible interpretations, and others may also be viable. Perhaps I'm off the mark, but many elements seemed to fall into place for me upon further reflection, so here we go. These are my thoughts about the brilliant series The Oldest View, and about the 2 stories I saw. This is the story I assumed was being told at first. The tale of Wyatt, a student lost in a sinister subterranean world. Here, he encounters forces determined to hunt him down. In this story, the first video, The Oldest View Renewal, serves as an eerie introduction to the world of the Rolling Giant, and its supposed creator, the man in grey. It sets the mood for something amiss, showcasing the grey man, likely botanist Julian Revachon, performing seemingly mundane tasks like collecting a flower and writing in his notebook. Eventually, he creates the giant for unknown reasons. In video 2, we meet Wyatt, a vlogger who stumbles upon a hole under a tree during his hiking trips. As the hole is on private property, he withholds its location but decides to investigate further. The hole itself is a creepy and unsettling sight. Beneath the tree, a long stairway leads into the earth, illuminated by several electric lamps. Wyatt, a brave and adventurous young man driven by exploration, descends the stairs without knowledge of where they lead. He ponders the unusual aspects such as lights remaining on and the absence of moisture even after rain. He also starts to detect the scent of freshly cut grass, a smell that lures him further into the depths. He pushes on, passing a door and a grate, eventually reaching an abandoned mall hundreds of meters underground, with eerie mall music playing in the distance. The atmosphere is unsettling and strange, leaving viewers wondering about the horrors lurking inside the mall. Yet there's an irresistible urge to explore more, to venture deeper into the mall and its tunnels, to discover what lies in the darkness. Following his upload of video 2, in video 3, Wyatt's story continues as he once again descends the staircase. He reports setting up cameras, which he obtained from his former botany professor, but captures nothing unusual. Undeterred, he descends the stairs again, noticing that a light has gone out, a foreboding sign of the impending decay that will become one of his adversaries. Still, he musters the courage to return to the mall, to explore further, and to share news and footage with us. The primary focus of this video is the exploration of the mall beneath the hills, a journey filled with permanent unease and danger, although Wyatt doesn't seem to fully consider it. He encounters various details that showcase Kane Pixel's meticulous recreation of the mall. The mall features numerous references to artists and builds an atmosphere suggesting that something terribly has gone awry. Posters and advertisements in the dimly lit corridors contribute to this sense of foreboding. One poster offers a first glimpse of the rolling giant, advertised as part of a parade, hinting at a terrible event linked to the giant. The first warning sign appears as the handle to the roll-up gate, which was absent in the previous video, has now appeared, suggesting that the giant is now prepared to ensnare and chase Wyatt. Nearly 20 minutes into the video, tension is high as Wyatt presses on hesitantly. Finally, we catch a glimpse of the rolling giant. It emerges from the darkness like a looming, inanimate statue, and Wyatt describes it as a piece of artwork that frightens him. Unbeknownst to him, the giant heard his remark and decides to play a game of cat and mouse, relishing in tormenting its prey. As music starts playing, Wyatt turns his back to the giant in a tense scene. He retraces his steps toward the entrance, only to find it blocked off, perhaps the giant's doing to ensure there's no escape? We don't really know, but what's certain is that the giant has now vanished from its place. As Wyatt searches for a way out, creepy images of an old man adorn the walls in part, and the lights come on, making him an easier target. Aimlessly wandering, Wyatt becomes more nervous, realizing he's in deep trouble and has taken on more than he can handle. He seeks the elevator he spotted earlier, but the mall's size and imposing presence make it difficult to find his way back. Suddenly, the giant reappears behind him, standing still and taunting him. Wyatt musters his courage and approaches it with a tentative "Hello?" Receiving no response, he slowly backs away and turns his back to it. A mistake. A foreboding rolling sound fills the air, and when he turns around, the giant has moved closer. "I'm leaving," he tells it, but the entity pays no attention, knowing he will never escape. It knows he will be its prey. "I'm trying to leave," Ryan mutters, desperate, realizing that a malevolent force is toying with him. A noise startles him briefly, and the giant seizes the opportunity to close in once more, resembling a weeping angel playing with Wyatt's fear. Thunder rumbles. Wyatt looks away momentarily again, and this time the giant does not stop. It rushes toward him, and Wyatt barely manages to ascend a broken escalator, escaping the monster that cannot climb stairs. This moment led me to a terrifying thought during my reaction. What if the stairs at the entrance, the long staircase that Wyatt had used to come down to the mall, what if they were built to contain this monster? Wyatt can finally catch his breath, though, as the giant turns around after an intense standoff, and slowly it disappears. But we know it's only a prelude to more terror. Wyatt seizes the opportunity and makes a run for it, running down the escalator into the mall again, dashing through the hallways, desperate to escape the monster. Its rolling sounds echo, and he's chased relentlessly until he finally smashes through a door. At last, he can rest. He continues to run through derelict corridors, imagining the giant lurking around every corner. The atmosphere remains tense and horrifying. Then, he discovers a room with clues leading to the exit. A welcome relief. The monster can still be evaded. As he ventures back through the corridors, he suddenly finds the place in ruins, with plants growing everywhere and paths having collapsed. Was the giant responsible? Did it warp this world, its own domain, to make Wyatt even more afraid? Again, we see the ad for the giant's parade, taunting. See them again. Learn their stories. Now it's clear what stories the giant tells. Tales of decay and death, of inevitable ruin. It uses the mall to instill these thoughts into Wyatt, creating a haunting atmosphere before his ultimate demise. Suddenly, the giant reappears, this time close, hidden behind a stairway, lurking. It starts to chase, and Wyatt barely manages to run up the broken escalator again. There it is, an exit, but it's closed. Yet another exit to the rooftop appears, one that apparently was not there before if you look back through the footage. He runs up several ramps and goes toward the narrow ledge. To his and my horror, the giant now uses the escalator, which was not broken after all. It comes up and stares at Wyatt, now enraged at the fact that he might escape after all. Behind it, an ominous wall opens up and gives way into darkness. "What do you want?" Wyatt screams, but the giant just makes the lights flicker and the ground shake, and finally charges at him. It crashes into the wall next to him, and the building starts to crumble and collapse. Desperately, Wyatt continues, sees the exit, but in the process of climbing up, falls to his death. The giant has won in the end. The last part of the video shows Wyatt lying outside, the giant having carried his corpse out and tauntingly peeking at it, happy that it was successful in ending him. Wyatt himself has turned grey, and we break away from the found footage style, seeing Wyatt for what he was, an unfortunate character in a movie who, in the end, was defeated by ruin and a malevolent entity, his drive for exploration leading him too far down the dark corridors beneath the ground. That is a pretty scary story, right? I think so. There are some parts of it I do not agree with, especially after several rewatches of key scenes and after thinking more about the whole thing. After taking all parts into consideration, I came to a different conclusion. So now, let me tell you another story. A story that you might argue is not as scary as the first one. That is fine. But hear me out. I think there is another way of looking at the oldest view. So now, we will get into the story of the giant who wanted to be remembered. There we are, back in the first video, back with a strange man. In this interpretation, the man is Julian Reverchon himself. Julian Reverchon was a botanist who catalogued many species and was a man of nature, an artist of sorts in real life. He was a real person, and the giant and the mole were real as well, although they no longer exist. I think they burned down one day. The rolling giant was a real-life creation built to honor the late botanist and presented in the mall to remember him. In a way, that is what we see in the first video, a botanist already dead, as implied by being grey, yet somehow still alive in nature, caring for it, cataloguing it. He is remembered for his botany collection and his way of life. In a sense, he is still alive, or at least his memory is, partly through this film by Kane Pixels actually. And there was also a giant built in his image, created to remind us of Julian and his botany, of his way with nature. This is depicted in the latter part of the video, and we see its creation. The song playing eerily in the background is a song written by Christabel and composed by Franz Abt. He lived from 1819 to 1885. It does sound unsettling in the video, but only because it plays from an old device. It sounds very ancient, though the message is not one of terror but of grief and reminiscing about bygone days. But in the end, the song actually turns hopeful, telling of things lost coming back and ending with parting was grief and pain, implying that it is not anymore. So in a way, this first video can be seen as telling us that Julian was a great man of nature, loved to catalogue it, cared for it, and to remember him and let his great caring nature endure, and to remind us of it, the giant was created in his image. The giant stands for his ideas and his spirit, might be implied to be possessed by Fabian himself and was modeled after him to carry these ideas into the future and keep them fresh in people's minds. The second video does not feature the giant, save only for being heard once in the beginning. It focuses on Wyatt, a student who ventures into the unknown, heroically going when no one has gone before, or does he? The following analysis might be a bit tainted by some impressions I got later on about Wyatt, but all in all, he's not a very likable person. He's not annoying or bad, but not very likable either. The first thing we basically learn about him is that he is trespassing on someone's property. Now, don't get me wrong, I know many urban explorers do that. Not even saying that he is one, but they certainly come to mind here. But Wyatt is already somewhere he is not supposed to be, and instead of addressing it as, "Hey, guys, you please don't do this, this is dangerous," he says, "We're not gonna worry about it, and don't trespass. Well, I can do it, but you should not unless you find something cool." It just almost mockingly said, and the impression I got was that he was more worried about the video getting flagged than actual trespassing and dangers. He then goes down the stairs, which in itself is very, very scary, because we go into an unknown place with him. There might be danger lurking, it might cave in, but no, he's not worried about any of those things. He is just worried about being caught, and describes things like the light being on with a light-hearted tone. I have to admit that this worked perfectly to make me anxious when watching the video for the first time, because we know something is gonna happen, and we know weird stuff will come up, but we also get this sense of, oh god, he's just gonna keep going, is he not? Oh god, he's really gonna do this. So, in a way, the scary part is not the tunnel, but Wyatt's drive to go down further, disregarding any potential danger other than being caught by some people. He also says stuff like, "I have no idea what I'm stepping into," but that is also said almost jokingly, almost like he wants people to go like, "Wow, he's so cool." Adding on to this, he states that the only reason he went out last time was to get more recording space, and not because he was anxious, again making his main concern the video, possibly not being cool and interesting enough. He also reports no water in the tunnel, something almost clearly unnatural to the viewer, but also dismisses that almost carelessly. He also states, "This is a stupid idea, but hey, I chose natural selection, right?" This almost comically teases his demise by being dumb and careless in the end, though here he plays it off as a joke. To me though, this was written in to illustrate that he is clearly doing something really dumb and does not care about the dangers to his life, but more about his social media status. He notes that he smells cut grass, possibly signaling him entering the giant's domain and getting the first taste of its story about nature and botany. It does not have to be a malevolent lure, but could be a positive one. It could be an invitation to remember the past with the giant, the past in nature, and Julian. In the end, he comes to a door and proclaims, "I'm freaking shaking," though the camera he holds in his hand is perfectly steady, betraying him and that he might just be doing this to garner clicks. I know he might have used a stabilizer, but this is also a possibility here. After passing the door, music starts playing. The giant again invites him in and wants to show him the wonders of its domain. Wyatt still tells the audience that he is not supposed to be there and still presses on, determined to film new exciting stuff for his vlog. He ends the video with a statement, "I'm not sure I can publish this on YouTube," which makes no sense as there was nothing in the video that violated any terms and agreements. I think his fear of not being able to post his journey, the only fear he really has, comes in as well here, but I also think he says this for the clicks and to garner hype for the next video. So now we're 2 videos in. We have established 2 things in this way of looking at the story. First, The giant is a benevolent creature that wants to teach people about nature in honor of Julian. Second, Wyatt disregards safety and everything else and only fears not being able to post his content or that people will stop him from posting his content. His fear is that of not being a social media hit, of not being relevant. The giant, on the other hand, is not relevant anymore and also wants to be relevant again, in a way. But they both want different kinds of relevance. One wants fame and one wants to teach ideas. Now we get to the third and final video. Remember how the giant was so malevolent in my other story? Well, you will be quite surprised now. We start off with Wyatt going back into the tunnels. He has set up cameras. He claims it's because people have suggested it in the comments of the last video, but he found nothing interesting. So he has to go down again to stay relevant and cannot rely on posting some weird stuff he caught on cameras. And down he goes into the mall. Again he smells nature, a cornfield. Again the giant is inviting him in. One important detail as well, the roll-up gate Wyatt opens here did not have a handle before. The giant perhaps wanted to make sure that Wyatt really wanted to learn more and to only make the mall accessible once it was sure that Wyatt wanted to explore and learn. I think this is the first misunderstanding. Wyatt wants to explore, yes, but not to learn, but to build his social profile. The giant, being from another time, does not know or understand this and misinterprets Wyatt's motives and thinks the exploration is for knowledge, something it wants to share. The whole mall, though now forgotten and derelict, was about art and nature. Signs tell us to live healthily, almost asking us to grow vegetables and care for them. Pictures remind us of Julian, the man of nature. There are plants everywhere still growing despite there being little light and no water. It is almost like an echo of the message behind the giant. And Wyatt also finds the message about the giants. Learn their stories for people who care about West Dallas. The giant is on the poster smiling and with open arms, inviting. Art studios everywhere. Wyatt even notes that, but he does not really care. He cares about the footage. He cares about showing something, anything, but not the message of the giant. He moves onward, and there he is, the giant, waiting, looking at him. You have found me, come and listen, it almost says. But Wyatt instantly disregards it and even insults it. Uncanny as F. I don't like it. I understand him, it makes sense. It is the first time he openly really dislikes something in the video. And you know what? I was scared of it as well when I first saw it, when it appeared. Like, it's very haunting. Ironically, it is the only thing he really should care about. But the meaningful giant with valuable content almost subconsciously disgusts him. He does not want that, he wants scary and interesting vlogs. So, of course, the weird statue is scary and creepy. That sells for Wyatt. This thought of the statue being evil. Yes, the statue looks uncanny, it is imposing and a bit weird, but only on a rough surface viewing. It notably has feathers for hands, symbolizing the peace and softness behind its facade, behind its creation. Wyatt, of course, does not notice through his preconceived notion of it being dangerous and creepy, of wanting it to be dangerous and creepy. He dismisses it after it does nothing. It was just a scary moment for his viewers, to make them see how badass and courageous he is. But almost instantly the music turns on and the lights turn on. The giant likely wants to show Wyatt something, wants to show him parts of its story, of the mall. It saw Wyatt and disregarded his animosity. It wants to teach him and show him. Wyatt reacts differently than anticipated by the giant, though. He gets even more scared. People might find him, might take away his video, might bar him from posting again. Still, he might get new stuff, so he slowly approaches the lights. The giant is already forgotten. Wyatt suddenly starts to panic because he thinks he saw someone. I think his fear of being discovered and the video ending and his efforts to hype up his audience resonate with each other, and Wyatt's mental state becomes more tense as a result. It wants to get out, probably to upload the video and explore further another time to keep his viewers interested. But the entrance is caved in. He cannot get out. I actually don't believe the giant trapped him, at least not in this version. Instead, I think the mole in itself was unstable, long forgotten, and in a state of disrepair. After all, Wyatt was ready to explore the mole lit up by the giant for him, so why harm him? From a naive perspective, he is now trapped in an underground mole. But what if he isn't? What if there are plenty of exits, an elevator and stairs, escalators? But still, the mole is collapsing. At least the tunnel already has. There's definitely a real danger that Wyatt may not make it out, that he'll be buried and forgotten as well. The giant notices this. Previously it had not been active. It didn't need to be. It wanted to tell its story. It showed Wyatt the lit up area where he could explore more. In a way, it was inviting his filming of the mole to share its stories with the world. But now that is not the most important thing anymore. Now it wants Wyatt to escape, to bring even a part of the story back to the surface. As Wyatt doesn't realize the danger he's in and slowly looks for another exit, he goes into an area that is actually away from the real exits. The giant can't take it anymore. It wants to help him, and so it approaches him. First, it stands near the mole map. He sees it and approaches it, somewhat what it wanted. It sees him coming and leaves, thinking that he got the gist and will now leave, saving at least some of its story. Wyatt is, however, a bit dull here. He doesn't really look at the map, at least he doesn't tell us anything about it, and wanders off again. The giant tries to show the way again, making noises. Wyatt even wonders if he should go to them or not. The giant might have noticed that Wyatt is an explorer type and would rather go towards things than away from them. Something he had done so all the times before. It had always worked that way. But time runs out now. The mole is getting more unstable. Perhaps the mole is a construct of the giant and it can only uphold it for some time. After all, the giant is able to change little things, but I think not all of it. I think it can change stuff to make Wyatt experience the story of Julian and then get out. But anyway, so Wyatt slowly goes to the noises as planned, but the giant wants to make sure. It appears behind him to block off the way away from the escalator, away from the exit. Wyatt, however, approaches the giant. It has now become his center of attention. He stays with it, but again, time is pressing. Wyatt is slow, hesitant. The giant, as I said, might not be able to uphold the mole for much longer. He notices that Wyatt is backing away and uses its imposing figure to press him towards the escalator. Thunder can be heard, signifying the collapse of the mole. The lights flicker. It will not hold for much longer. Wyatt has wasted too much time exploring and not really looking at things. He ignored the giant's story, at least mostly. Finally, Wyatt runs up the escalator, away from the giant. It sees this and again thinks, okay, he got it, he will now go out and tell my story. So it leaves again. But Wyatt is panicking. He knows he's the giant as a malevolent entity that wants to block him, to chase him away from the exit. By this, he is tragically driven in the wrong direction. The giant probably thinks, hey, are you daft? And chases after him, trying to get him back to the escalator, but Wyatt bolts, runs into office corridors, escaping the giant. There, he learns about the exit up top. Interestingly, the numbers on the sheet that leads him to the information are Julian's date of death and birth, again reminding us, the viewers, of him, but only very subtly. But after finding out that the exit is upstairs, Wyatt just goes there. He doesn't even consider the fact that he already was there before and the giant had chased him towards that place. And the mole is now rotting away. Everything is already broken and plants grow everywhere. Perhaps the giant uses its powers to hold them all together here. After all, plants can grow in cracks and perhaps stabilize everything. Wyatt again stupidly takes his time and looks at the plants and the surroundings. He finds the picture of the giant, or rather, several. I don't know if this is a coincidence, but the giant might try to tell him here, "Hey, mate, I am holding this together with my story. I need you to run. I need you to get out. Tell others, but don't stay. I can't hold it together any longer." Wyatt slowly approaches the escalator, but the giant has had enough. It charges at him to make sure he runs up again, to emphasize the pressing nature of the matter, and Wyatt runs up, away from it. He sees the exit is closed, but finds another one where ramps lead up to a rooftop exit. Again, Wyatt hesitates, but the giant can't risk it. It knows that Wyatt is afraid. It goes up the escalator. Wyatt waits again, terrified. A wall breaks down next to the giant. It just waits there. Possibly this was also an exit it wanted to show him, a safer one than the one he takes in the end. But Wyatt doesn't understand. He's scared of the giant, of its appearance, of its weird behavior that he cannot understand. "What do you want?" he screams. "Run," it tries to tell him, the lights starting to flicker. The ground rumbles. It's too late. It can't uphold them all. It charges at him. "Get out!" It doesn't want to get him. It could have used the ramps to chase after him. It wants to urge him to get out, even if it's through the unsafe exit upstairs it had created for him just previously. Interestingly, in a previous shot, this exit was not upstairs, so it might have put it together last minute while Wyatt was already close to make sure that he somehow gets out. The mall starts collapsing. Wyatt nears the exit, climbing. The giant has done what it could. Now it's Wyatt's turn. He's almost there and slips, falling to his death. His superficiality and lust for clicks for something new and cool have cost him his life. But the giant still wants its message to get out somehow. So it carries Wyatt's body upstairs and hopes someone will find the camera. Or perhaps it uploaded the videos itself somehow. Anyway, Wyatt himself is grey now, the same way as Julian was in the beginning, but Wyatt is not alive as Julian was. He is dead. He is not still living on in something else. He is being forgotten. Yes, his videos survived. But it was not Wyatt that made them interesting. It was the mall and the giant. You remember them more vividly as well, don't you? I do. In the oldest view, Wyatt was in the end just a superficial character, a person venturing out so we could get the giant. It was about the giant, it was about Julian, about his story. Though he is dead, he still lives. Wyatt does not. He was just a tool. Wyatt ended the way his videos were. Just a surface level, empty, meaningless man, ended by his lust for social attention, for being seen as a cool, daring explorer who could not get hurt, who doesn't fear anything. But the giant endures. It got out. It shaped Wyatt's journey and made sure Julian's memories were captured. It created ways for Wyatt, a handle on a gate and an exit up above. It morphed the wall to show things in memory of Julian, his birth and death date on the safety sheet, and his image and message everywhere, explicitly and implicitly. As I said, perhaps the giant did upload the videos itself. Perhaps it got the idea from observing Wyatt. Perhaps it wanted to spread its message as well by using YouTube. Perhaps the giant was Julian's kind spirit, as I mentioned earlier, and as was shown in video 1, and not his ghost, living on. Who knows? I do not know why it is titled The Oldest View. Perhaps because a superficial view is the oldest one? Again, who knows? Only Kane pixels. There are probably things I missed. There are probably things you disagree with. Still, I hope I showed you my way of thinking about the story of both of them. The surface level one, the story that tells about Wyatt encountering a creepy thing in an abandoned mall down below that chased and ended him. Or the story about the giant who wanted to tell his story the story of Fabienne, but was misunderstood by Wyatt, his ignorance and superficiality not allowing him to see the true meaning of the giant in the mall, leading to him overstaying his time and being consumed by his behaviors, by his actions. After watching The Oldest View for the first time, I was admittedly a bit disappointed. I expected horror, like in the Backrooms videos. And some I got, because I too was superficial and prejudged the things. I thought the way Wyatt hoped me to think. But after reflecting on the videos, I think there was so much more, and I just must applaud the genius script writing of Kane Pixels. Perhaps my interpretation was not the intended one, I know that, but I still loved thinking this through and learned some new stuff. So even if I did not get what Kane Pixels perhaps wanted to tell, I still got something of value for me, and I hope for you as well. What did you think? Which of the stories did you like more? Which do you consider canon? What other story was there that might have been told and that I missed? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe, it helps me a bit. Also, if you want to support my horror content, check out volume 1 of my horror series called Remnants of the Old Truth, which is available for free as an audiobook on Vidith22's horror channel. Link is pinned in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.